we're still weirdly enough in the First World War because there's a lot of things that's happening.
Well, at this point, of course, Bolsheviks win the civil war and they rule much of the former Russian Empire. So they regain Ukraine and the states on the Caucasus, for example, Central Asia.
Where is Caucasus again?
Caucasus?
Where is that again?
Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from these Finland, Baltic states, and Poland, they regain all the lands controlled by the Russian Empire, and
But not for long, right?
well, for 70 long years actually. So, like, the Finland, Baltic states, and yeah, you mean like that they would stay independent? No, well, for the 20 years they would stay outside the Russian Empire, the Soviet Empire. Yeah.
Okay, so before the Second World War, they were free there. After the First World War, those the Baltic states and Finland was free, or I mean eastern part of Finland.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. So these little countries, well, Poland wasn't exactly small, but they stayed out of the Russian rule, and it was at this point war with Poland, for example, stopped Soviet expansion west, like. So Red Army during the under Trotsky tried to advance near Warsaw, but it was stopped. And at this point, Soviet Russia and later in Soviet Union, they had to rethink what world revolution is not going to happen. Revolution has failed in Germany, for example. Actually, one of the interesting facts is that Lenin and Trotsky and the like, they didn't believe in revolution in one country, in Russia. They hoped that there would be revolution in Germany, for example, and German comrades would come to Russia and help building socialism.
Wow.
So that was one of the reasons that it didn't exactly go to plan. And I think maybe they hadn't resolved what they were going to do next before Lenin died. And of course, after Lenin's death, it was this rather unknown party leader, party secretary, Georgian by the name of Zhugashvili, Joseph Stalin, who came to power.
How did Lenin die?
1924.
But how?
Oh no. Well, it is maybe he had something with brain. I'm not certain. I remember reading that he had maybe syphilis, but I'm not certain of that.
Okay, I'll look it up later.
Yeah. No, well, anyway, it was Stalin who sort of, one could say, who created Soviet Union as a great power. So under Lenin, it was it didn't have it was in quite a chaotic condition. There was famine and revolts, and when he died, it was in quite a poor condition. But Stalin was the sort of course, he was a horrible dictator under whose rule millions died. But of course, also what the Russians today like to remember is that he industrialized the Soviet Union. He created this great power.
Right, we can't call it Russia anymore.
Yeah.
From now on, we must call it Soviet Union.
Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, as the official name is.
USSR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in USSR, Stalin, of course, ruled with an iron fist, but he was, one could say that he was sort of a brutal builder of communism within Soviet Union. But of course he was more pragmatic in foreign policy, and this was he was rather cautious he didn't, if it hadn't been for the Second World War, I don't know if he had sort of started such a big war. When Stalin tried to expand, it was with much weaker opponents, like at the beginning of Second World War against Poland, which was already being defeated by the Germans, and against Finland, which of course was believed to be much weaker, but it proved a more tougher opponent than they believed.
Yeah. Before we move on from Stalin and Lenin, who do you think would be more merciful and less brutal from the two of them?
Well, Lenin, but only in a sense that Lenin was tolerant of the different point of views within the party. So he allowed like...
Try to pull this a little bit in front of you.
Yeah. He was tolerant of people like Trotsky and Bukharin and Stalin, who sometimes had different opinions from him. But Stalin was different because he didn't tolerate any opposition within the party, and of course there were these big party purges in the late 1930s, so where the leading Bolsheviks, old Bolsheviks, the people who had done the revolution, they were liquidated, they were killed, they were purged.
And because they would be potential threats?
Potential threats, and like rivals to Stalin's vision. Of course, one possible reason for these purges was that Stalin waited that there would become a new sort of big world war, and he wanted to sort of do away with all the opposition before the war started, so there wouldn't like be a sort of potential fifth column within the country.
I see. It says on the internet that, like, if you analyze the personality types of Stalin and Lenin, Lenin was more intellectual and Stalin was more practical and more doer and less of a thinker.
Yeah, well, that's right. Although Stalin was also, he read a lot, and it is like sort of an image created by his opponents, like Trotsky, that he was sort of an unintellectual oaf or sort of foolish person altogether. He was cleverer than they give him credit for, but of course that doesn't exactly excuse that he was sort of a brutal dictator who did like many of these Russian leaders we've spoken about, like Ivan the Terrible, Peter the Great, Lenin, Stalin, and also Putin, that they wasted a lot of human potential.
They what?
Human potential, like human capacity, like having immense amount of talented people left Russia, immense amount of talented people were killed. And that is again the age-old and justify the means ideology. So they were like, Stalin was very successful, but he left intergenerational trauma and a lot of people who would have contributed to development of Soviet Union, and later Russia, they were wiped out.
Yeah. Solzhenitsyn talks a lot about that in his book, like that they're taking all of the intellectuals, all of like even, well, obviously it started with the political thinkers, but even people like engineers were taken because they were seen as, you know, kulaks, and you know, and maybe it had an impact also on, you know, the children, because I mean evolution is a thing, right? So if you kill or exile all of the intellectuals, there will be less of those children too. That's just how genetics works.
Yeah.
So I think it must have had long-term impact too, in a way, actually.
Yeah, I think you are right, and that is one of the things I've often wondered about the present day Russia. So, like, there has been a long-term brain drain. So, after the Russian Empire, a lot of most talented intellectual people, they emigrated. Millions of people emigrated from Russia, but many of them are from the most talented and intellectual people. Then Stalin's purges destroyed a lot of human potential. Then Second World War, and well, of course, Russia is such a big big nation. It can there will be a new potential eventually, but then how long does it take when it is simply too much? Like now with this Putin's war, there is another wave of immigration, another wave of brain drain, and I don't think it can eternally go on. Like each generation there is some wave of brain drain, people are moving out, most intellectual people are leaving out, so eventually it has to harm a country, like permanently.
If you filter water many times enough, it will be cleaner in the end. But we're like, if we go back to the dates, so First World War ended. Russia were kind of lucky, you must say, that they didn't get more conquered or abused when they were in a weak position, since Germany lost.
Yeah.
And or do you want to add something?
Well, maybe for the ordinary person, maybe the German occupation would have been preferable to the Bolshevik rule, but anyway, for Russia as the state, it was advantageous.
Yeah, good point. I hope you enjoyed that clip of the HH podcast. If you want to see another clip, click here, down to your left. And if you want to see the whole unedited episode, click down here to your right. And last but not least, if you want to subscribe, you can do so here in the middle. Thank you.